Well, here's a video that nobody really asked for, but I'm doing it anyway because I'm annoyed and I need to talk about taxes. And before I do that, I need to do a thing that I should do on this channel, which is describe myself for people that can't see. You'd think after like 3 years on YouTube I would have figured out how to do that, but nope, I have not. So I am a white man and I have shoulder-length curly hair. Today I'm wearing a black hooded sweatshirt. Most of it, I believe, is not in frame, but it's a Sean James sweatshirt. So if you see any designs, that's what it is. And okay, now taxes. I am so annoyed because I just did them, and by me, I mean my wife. We're gonna talk about all the things that annoy me. There are 12 things that annoy me about doing taxes as a blind person. And number one is it's doing taxes. So for anybody at any point, if you live in the US, taxes are stressful. You don't want to mess them up. You don't want to do the wrong things. The innate stress level of doing taxes when you're not disabled is like up there, you know? It's pretty high on the list of stressful things that you have to do as an adult. So to set the stage, doing taxes is stressful. Now, for the other 11 points, the actual things that annoy me about being blind and doing taxes. So number one was just doing them. Number two, the assumption that I can't possibly be employed enough to need accessibility in order to do my own taxes. And I'll get to further points on this, but I have literally had, when I was on Social Security, I had people tell me from Social Security, don't bother getting off Social Security because you're never going to make it and you're going to be back on it again, okay? There is an assumption that disabled people, that blind people are not able to be functional enough in society to even need accessible ways to do taxes because there's no expectation that I need to do taxes as a blind person because there's no way I could possibly be employed enough to have to do taxes properly, independently. Point number three, keeping track of physical paperwork. This drives me insane because I do my best every time to figure out a system for myself, and just about every time a critical piece of it falls through the cracks at the last minute. I'll give you an example. I have to have a fancy number every year to do my taxes that they mail me physically, and I have to keep track of that. And so I try to put it in one spot. This year I was lucky because I have a new desk and I have a desk drawer that didn't have a lot in it, and so I put the envelope at a very specific like front left corner of the desk, and when I opened the desk I could reach down, find it, and there it was. And so this year that was not a problem. But if you misplace this piece of paper, you have to either request a new one where they have to mail you one in like weeks, or I think that's it. I think that's the only way that you can get a replacement. So physical paperwork, and it's not just those. You get mailed copies of your W-2s. There was a thing that I was not sure I was going to get in the mail that I randomly got, like, as of, I don't know, last Friday or something. That was an important piece of paper. And so just the keeping trackage of papers when you're blind, it's like, it's all a piece of paper. You know, they're all folded because they got mailed, so it's not like I can differentiate by which one's in an envelope. And so usually what I end up doing is I make a folder and I just throw anything that I think is tax related or that someone tells me is tax related into this folder. And then when it comes tax time, I have to throw that folder at some poor soul and go, this is my tax stuff. And they open it and they go, oh, I mean, yeah, it is, but it's going to take me 20 minutes to figure it all out. That's point number three. Point number four is related to point three. So from physical, we move to point number four. Keeping track of files electronically. Now, organizing and collecting them. So, kind of in the same vein as things being mailed to you for taxes, now things are available electronically. However, they're not always accessible with screen readers. They're not always easy to access in the first place. And trying to download files, get them in the right file type, put them in the right kind of folder on my computer so they don't get lost, but they're also, you know, secure and in where I need them and I can access them. It's a similar problem to the physical papers, but electronically, from an accessibility standpoint, it's far from ideal. So that's point number four. Point number five, putting physical and electronic things together correctly in the right order, plus the IRS needs their stuff, and so you get to this point where you have, hopefully, right, in theory, all of the things that you need to do your taxes, and some of them are in physical pieces of paper in a folder, and some of them are in a folder on the computer, and it's like, do I have the things so when I go to, start filling in the forms, and particularly this year when I kind of passed the controls to my wife and said, okay, can you help me? And trying to make sure that it was all available was really, really frustrating this year, and we did it, but number 6 falls off of this. And number 6 is file types and where they are and how to get or convert them, even if the conversions themselves are inaccessible. I will talk about this more in a second, but this is such a pain. So file types. As far as Braille, things that I can read myself, I need a .txt file, and then I need to put that on a flash drive and put that into my Chameleon 20, which is a Braille device, and then I can kind of read something, but not if it has formatting. And so there's hurdle number 1. If I wanted access to my own documents that way, it's not really feasible to do it that way. And so I often trust someone else, and I say, okay, I have this in a PDF form, or the one that I wanted to talk about specifically with this example is to submit file forms. I had to convert all of my files to JPG files, which for a sighted person, you're like, okay, so you make it a JPEG and you send it in and you're done. Yeah, that's great, except my screen reader doesn't read a JPEG, so I have to really make sure that when I name a file, I name it something that makes sense and put it back in the folder where it's supposed to go so that everything is in the same place, and then convert it to a file type I can't use, and then hope that that's the right thing when I hit the upload button. So that's point number 6. Point number 7, inaccessible forms. So much of what it takes to do taxes requires forms, and whether that's the physical, the W-2 itself, and that kind of goes back into the file formatting piece, or the online ability to fill things out where, for example, the first steps of a form might have a text field, right? And I can type into that text field, so it'll say full legal name, and I can type my name into the thing, and then I tab and it says, for example, state of residence, and then there's a drop-down list, and randomly that just won't work. So I can click the button and it'll be state residence button, and I'll click it and it'll go state residence button. So it's yeah, it's there, won't let me select it. So it's inaccessible. And then I need to go get help and get assistance. So different parts of different forms being a combination of accessible and then inaccessible, it's exhausting. And that leads me into point number 8, which is kind of, I'm retreading some ground here, but varying file formats for different things depending on where I download my W-2 from, or where what's required for something to actually get submitted when you do your taxes electronically. So I'm treading a little bit of ground, but I mean this one, I guess, more in the line of actually preparing it and putting everything together with your preparer, the file formats there. And then point number 9, this gets into what I've already kind of been talking about, but mixed accessibility on tax prep sites. So different buttons are accessible. The messaging feature that I'm supposed to be able to use to have a human being look at my taxes is almost completely inaccessible with my screen reader. And so I have to turn that off. I have enough functional vision to zoom in a lot so I can look at this thing, and it works, but only just, and it's exhausting. Okay, so I've kind of made some of the same points throughout. These last couple points are where right now I'm very grateful for the ability that I do have and the system I do have and the people that I do have to make this work. However, considering all the things I just told you about, number 10 for me is having to ask for help from my wife and overwhelming her with my complicated situation. So my wife is very, very supportive and she's willing to help out. But when we sat down to do my taxes, we thought it was going to be kind of a plug and play. I thought I had everything. And as all of these different problems that I've been talking about came up, for her, it just got to be overwhelming for her to figure out why this other thing didn't work and why I didn't have this form and this format and how we needed to upload things. And it worked. But I felt bad because that wasn't even my wife doing her own taxes. That was her doing mine alongside me. And it was really hard, I think, on her. And it's frustrating that because these things aren't accessible for me to do on my own, that I had to rely on her and then put her through that struggle and those frustrations. That was tough. Point number 11, not being able to see enough to understand and have tax situational awareness enough to help out much when I'm having my wife help me out. So for example, some of these file formatting things, she would kind of try to explain like what the problem was, and I would not understand it, and so I would turn a file into the very type that it wasn't accepting, and she would get frustrated because it's like, well, no, that's the one that doesn't work. And I was like, oh, I thought that's the one that had to be. And it just not being able to visually see these things and going in circles, and it just kind of creates this endless feedback loop. All of this so I can give the government more money. It's exhausting. Finally, point number 12. And once we kind of got through this yesterday, I could not help feel this way, and I wanted to talk about this to wrap this video up. And as much as I like to put not necessarily a positive spin on disability, but realistically know that I can do a lot for myself and that I'm capable and that I have a lot of skills, when these systems are designed like this, we get to the point where I feel like point number 12, which is in terms of taxes, sometimes feeling, for me, guilty, overwhelmed, and feeling like inaccessibility is somehow my fault, even though I know it's all of these things that we've talked about today put together, creating an inaccessible system. And it gets really hard when I work all year, I make the money, I have a job, I function in society this way. And then when it comes time to do my taxes, which again, on paper, at least to me, doesn't seem like it should be overly complicated, we hit this nightmare snag, and I feel like I failed. I feel like there's something that I should have done to organize better. I feel like there's something that I should have done to be more prepared, even though I think I did everything that I am able to do, and I did it pretty well. I feel like I didn't do enough. And I feel like these systems, unless you have a professional, are designed to be stressful. And I'm still in the process of waiting for, taxes for this year to be finalized, and I'm feeling very overwhelmed and stressed out. All of this to say next year, I'm hiring someone else to do my taxes. Thank you for checking this video out. I don't know if this is something that gets a lot of coverage on the internet, but as a disabled person, I needed to get this off my chest. I needed to say it in a way that was a little bit concise. And I hope this video was interesting, at the very least. If you haven't done your taxes, I guess do your taxes. Paying for the things in the world that are happening through taxes is incredibly frustrating in and of itself. But when it's made inaccessible, it gets that much more complicated and exhausting. And I wanted to talk about that. So thank you for watching this. I will see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Thanks. Peace.